Hello, and welcome to a brand new day of free-to-play here on Magic the Gathering Arena. Get the dish on the latest with me, Lord Rumfish. I'm going to be taking part in the early access event. It's happening in 2 days now. Get ready, get set. I'm not going to be live streaming, but I am going to be recording. I'm going to be getting those videos out onto YouTube as fast as I can. So for this video, I'm going to do a quick overview of the rules primer and just kind of a what to expect when you're looking at Wilds of Eldraine. So in the product, there's a bonus sheet that's called Enchanting Tales. There are 63 cards on the Enchanting Tales. They're not going to be standard legal. But it's my understanding they'll show up in draft boosters, which means that you can play with the cards in sealed and draft events. And they include things like Necropotence. Honestly, there are some incredibly powerful enchantments. They're all enchantments. Some of them, I actually do love the art. I think the Necropotence art here is cool. But just getting reprints of some of these cards like Doubling Season is a very welcome addition. Could make the draft format a little wacky, but I did enjoy March of the Machine, as over the top and bizarre as it was. So maybe I'll enjoy this draft format as well. Alright, role tokens. So there are 7 new predefined tokens. Each one is an aura that enchants a creature. So it's interesting. We've only had a couple of token enchantments in the past. There was a Planeswalker a while back who had an X cost, and they made these little token enchantments that you could sacrifice to scry and draw a card, I think. And you could do other things with them. What are those called? Shards, maybe? 6 of the role tokens are created by cards in the main set. 1 card in Commander decks adds a 7th for greater complexity. Alright. So here are all of the roles. Cursed. The enchanted creature is power and toughness 1/1. So this is a debuff. It does not remove all abilities. Also, if you haven't played with a card like this before, it does not remove +1 counters or other auras or equipment that were attached to the creature. You could turn a creature into a 1/1 and it could still be very, very deadly. Just quick heads up warning there. Right? You know, if your opponent has Adeline and you put a cursed role token on Adeline, she's going to have low toughness, but her power is actually going to be +1 higher because of the cursed role token. Instead of having 0 power on her stat line, she'll have 1. But her toughness will go down to 1 instead of 4. And she'll still get that big boost to power. She'll still have all of her text box. So just be mindful that Cursed is useful, but it's not an end-all be-all. Monster. The enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has Trample. That's nice. Royal gets +1/+1 and has Ward 1, which means you have to pay 1 colorless to target it with anything. It's good. If they make that one too accessible, it could be too good. Sorcerer. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has whenever this creature attacks, scry 1. It's fine. Wicked. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1, and when this aura is put in a graveyard from the battlefield, each opponent loses 1 life. So, there's a neat one for rats, I think, that puts like a Wicked role token on all the rats you control, so then they're not only bigger, but when all those rats die, the opponent's going to lose life. Other than maybe the Trample and the Ward, there's a possibility that Wicked role tokens are the most powerful. And Young Hero. Enchanted creature has whenever this creature attacks if its toughness is 3 or less. Put a +1/+1 counter on it. 3 or less. So if it has 3 toughness, it'll still get a counter, but not after that. That's interesting. Young Hero is probably the weakest one, But if your deck has a bunch of, 1/1s or whatever, then it could give the most potential power toughness boost out of all of these. It's also, other than Sorcerer, it's the only one with an attack trigger. And then Commander only. Virtuous. Enchant creature gets +1/+1 for each enchantment you control. That's bonkers. What? What? Okay. Oh, here's a little roll token card. It looks like they fit 2 rolls onto one side of the card. Maybe if you flip it over, there'll be 2 more rolls on the other side of the card. That's pretty handy. So anytime a creature has more than 1 roll controlled by the same player, the creature keeps the newest roll, and all the others controlled by that player are put in the graveyard. So a creature can have 2 rolls if they're from different players. I think there was some confusion about this, maybe. They're not like Enchant Worlds, where there can be only 1. A creature can have 1 roll for every player in the game. So you can put a Wicked Roll token on your creature to make it bigger. The opponent can put a Cursed Roll token on it to make it a 1/1. It'll still be a 2/2 because of your Wicked Roll token on it. It'll just carry both of those. All right, next up we're going to talk about Bargain. It's pretty straightforward. So this is capturing the flavor of making a deal with the devil or a deal with the fae. So when you bargain, you sacrifice an artifact, enchantment, or token, and it's may. You may do it. Every spell with bargain has 2 modes. The mode of what happens if you don't bargain and if you do bargain. So Troublemaker, Oofy, whatever. I always pronounced it oof. Is a 2/2 for 2. All right, just a grizzly bear. But this grizzly bear has bargain, and when it enters the battlefield, if it was bargained, you exile an artifact or enchantment an opponent controls. Very nice ability. A bargain, if you really want it to go off when you cast it, you have to put a little bit of thought into your deck construction. It's not too hard to accomplish. But if you just throw it into any deck, you might not necessarily have an artifact, enchantment, or token. So Torch the Tower deals 2 damage to a target creature or planeswalker. If you bargained, it deals 3 damage instead and you get a scry 1. Either way, if a permanent dealt damage by this would die, exile it instead. So Torch the Tower is strictly better than a spell that we got in... was it Midnight Hunt or Crimson Vow? Blessed Bolt, whatever it's called. I believe this spell is strictly better than Blessed Bolt because it has upside. Otherwise, I think it's identical to Blessed Bolt. Bargain's not too hard to understand. If you've got a thing to sacrifice, an artifact, enchantment, or token, then you can do it. And there are lots of ways to get this to trigger. There are food tokens, there are going to be roll tokens, right? The auras. There'll be creature tokens. There are just going to be lots of ways to bargain in the set if you choose to build a limited deck to take advantage. And in Constructed, of course, you can definitely take advantage. Celebration, this one's a little bit odd. It's not too hard to trigger, though. So if 2 or more non-land permanents enter the battlefield under your control this turn, something happens. Right? This condition is met, a thing happens. Every card is a little different. So it's an ability word, it's not a keyword. In the case of Ash Party Crasher, I think this is a reference to Cinderella. You get this 2/2 with haste. And with Celebration, whenever she attacks, right, so you need to get 2 things on the battlefield before combat. then you get a +1/+1 counter on Ash. Um, that's a really strong ability. And the very first time she attacks, she's a 3/3. If you can trigger it again the next turn, 4/4. Just keep snowballing up from there. So if you can keep the party going with the celebration, then Ash is going to be quite a threat. Celebration is one of those kinds of mechanics like Metalcraft and whatever that I don't really know how I feel about it. I feel like this one's going to be easier to trigger than Metalcraft was, and some of the other similar keywords like this, or ability words, I should say. So first impression is I don't love Celebration, but I can see where it's easy to get it to go off. So we'll see. We'll see how it plays. And Adventures. These are returning from Throne of Eldraine. If you're like me, where you weren't really playing much around Throne of Eldraine, then it's good to be familiar with how adventures work and not to underestimate them. So they come on permanent cards, usually creatures, and they get this adventure. Now you can always just cast the permanent card, right? In which case you didn't get the adventure. It just does its thing, enters the battlefield. But if you cast the adventure as a spell while it's in your hand, then you exile this card, and you can still play the other part of it, the Besotted Knight in this case, from exile. So as long as it makes sense to play out the adventure part of it first, then you get additional value out of the card by playing the other part second. It's an interesting tension that's built into adventure cards, whether you want to get the creature or the permanent, or whether you want to try to squeeze the value out of the adventure part first. The best adventure cards are the ones where the adventure is cheaper than the other part of the card it's attached to, and it's definitely worth it. Definitely worth playing the adventure part just as a reasonable card. In the case of Besotted Knight, Betrayed the Beast is actually pretty nasty. You give a creature +1/+1 and ward 1. You could be triggering, prowess. You can be bolstering up a double striker or whatever, kind of protecting your stuff. Now, the Besotted Knight part of the card is very forgettable, kind of like limited playable stuff, but this part of the card is almost there on Constructed. Almost. Maybe not quite. Decadent Dragon is another great example here. So the dragon part of the card is pretty good. It's a 4/4 flying trampler. Whenever it attacks, it makes a treasure token. It's no Goldspan dragon, but it's still useful. But before you cast this part of the card at 4, you have for 3 mana Expensive Taste, and it's an instant. Exile the top 2 cards of target opponent's library face down so they don't know what you got. You may look at and play those cards for as long as they remain exiled. And that's true no matter what else happens during the game, right? You can play the dragon dies, you still have access to these 2 cards. This one's really neat. All right, you get instant speed, card advantage, and a big relevant body on the battlefield for 1 card. This is why adventures are so good. There's just so much card advantage packed into a single card. They're really the stuff that mid-range is made of. Adventures will make their way into every style of deck. There will be beatdown adventures, there will be control adventures. They're all going to get played. But I'm just saying this kind of style of card is a very mid-rangey kind of a style of card, where you've got all this baked-in card advantage, multiple things it can do. A single card can serve multiple roles within your deck, try to solve different problems. It's very mid-rangey. And that basically wraps it up for my rules primer here, folks. I'm excited to be diving into this set in a couple of days. I might try a bit more constructed this time. All right. I didn't have the best fortune or luck with limited when I was doing Lord of the Rings. So I think this time I might try to do some more constructed decks off the bat. See how that goes for me. I already have some neat ideas that I am brewing up. So stay tuned here in 3 or more days, once I've got time to edit and release the videos. You're going to start seeing all the fruits of my labor. Until then, like, subscribe, check out my other videos. Checking out the other videos is the big one. And until next time, never stop honing your critical thinking and empathy.